Dr. Jonathan Miller had treated hundreds of children in his career, yet something about Nia shook him deeply. As he watched her sleep, her tiny chest rising and falling with fragile breaths, he felt an unfamiliar heaviness settle in his heart. Her face, though exhausted, held traces of courage and survival he rarely saw in children her age. He wondered what she had endured in the vast New Mexico desert, where temperatures swung brutally from scorching heat to freezing cold. The thought of her wandering alone through such unforgiving terrain made him clench his jaw in determination. Throughout the night, nurses checked Nia's vitals while drive. Miller reviewed her lab reports. Severe dehydration, mild malnutrition, exposure, this child had been through more than many adults ever faced. Yet her tests also revealed a resilience that impressed him. She was fighting to live, even as her small body struggled to recover. Dr. Miller gently adjusted her blanket, noticing the intricate bead patterns on her pouch. They weren't random, they told a story, a cultural message he wished he understood better. It reminded him of how little outsiders truly knew about Apache traditions. When he finally left the hospital that night, the desert wind brushed against his face, carrying a strange sense of unease. The vast sky above, scattered with stars, suddenly felt larger than ever. Jonathan couldn't stop thinking of Nia out there alone before she collapsed. Someone must be looking for her, someone must be desperate to find her. But no missing child reports had come in that week. The thought puzzled him, but exhaustion forced him home. Still, sleep offered no escape from the questions haunting his mind. The next morning, he returned to the hospital earlier than usual. To his relief, Nia was awake, sitting quietly with a cup of water in her hands. Her dark eyes followed him cautiously as he approached. He spoke softly, asking how she felt, but she only nodded. Her silence wasn't fear, it was guardedness, the kind seen in children who learn too early that the world wasn't always safe. He gave her time, offering gentle reassurance and a warm smile instead of pressure. As hours passed, Nia began responding with small gestures, tiny nods, faint shakes of her head. She clutched her handmade pouch every time someone new entered the room. Jonathan noticed how tightly she held onto it, it was clearly precious. When he asked if she wanted it near her while she slept, she looked at him with a flicker of trust he hadn't seen before. That single moment told him more than any words could have. She was still afraid, but she didn't see him as a threat. Social services arrived later in the afternoon, but Nia's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. She trembled violently, shrinking back in her bed, her breath coming in rapid gasps. Jonathan stepped between her and the officials without thinking. His voice was calm but firm as he explained that she wasn't ready for strangers. The officials agreed to postpone questions until she stabilized, but as they left, he felt the weight of responsibility shift even more onto his shoulders. Nia trusted him, and that trust mattered. Over the next 2 days, Jonathan stayed in close contact with tribal authorities, hoping someone might recognize Nia's description. The Apache Council promised to spread word through the community, though they warned it might take time. Many families lived far from town, some without phones or easy transportation. While he waited, Jonathan spent as much time with Nia as his shifts allowed. She had begun eating small meals and even managed a faint smile when he brought her a stuffed animal from the hospital donation box. Progress was slow, but it was real. Late on the third night, while Jonathan sat beside her bed, Nia finally whispered more than a single word. "Storm," she murmured, pointing weakly to the window. He leaned closer, encouraging her gently. She described in halting phrases how she had been separated from her family during a sudden desert storm. Her voice shook as she spoke of the wind, the darkness, and the fear. Jonathan listened intently, his heart tightening with every detail. She had survived days alone with nothing but her pouch and her courage. It was a miracle she had made it to the hospital at all. By the 4th day, Nia's strength had noticeably improved. She walked short distances with assistance and responded verbally more often, though still quietly. Jonathan completed her morning exam and stepped outside the room to update her chart. Just as he finished, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. When he answered, a steady female voice introduced herself as a representative from the Apache Tribal Council. She explained that 3 women had identified Nia from the description: her grandmother, aunt, and older sister. They were already traveling to town, anxious to see her. Later that evening, as Jonathan arrived home after his shift, he spotted 3 figures standing near his porch. Their silhouettes were calm and composed against the fading orange sky. The moment he stepped closer, he recognized the traditional clothing and beadwork. The eldest woman stepped forward, her eyes shining with gratitude. She spoke Naya's name softly before thanking him with a sincerity that struck him deeply. In that instant, Jonathan realized the weight of what had happened. He hadn't just saved a child, he had restored hope to a family and bridged a connection between two worlds, the soft knock at Drive. Miller's door had been so gentle that he nearly thought he imagined it. But when he opened it and saw the three Apache women standing quietly on his porch, he felt an unexpected stillness fill the early morning air. Their presence was calm, dignified, and powerful. The rising sun cast a warm glow behind them, making their silhouettes appear almost radiant. For a moment, no one spoke. The doctor sensed that whatever they had come to say carried deep emotional weight, and he stepped aside instinctively, giving them space and respect. The eldest woman finally stepped forward. Her voice was soft yet steady, carrying generations of strength within it. "We are Naya's family," she said, her eyes meeting his with sincerity. "You saved our child, and we have come to thank you." The two younger women behind her nodded, their expressions filled with a mixture of relief and lingering fear from the ordeal. "Doctor." Miller felt a lump form in his throat. He had treated many children in crisis, but something about Naya's case felt different, more personal, more human. As the women stood there, they began explaining what had happened in the days before Naya was found. A sudden desert storm had rolled in, powerful and unpredictable, disorienting the young girl as she gathered wild herbs near her family's land. When the winds cleared, Naya was nowhere to be seen. For days, her family searched the canyons, the dry riverbeds, and the narrow trails, calling her name into an unforgiving wilderness. Every night, fear tightened its grip, but they refused to give up hope, holding on to the belief that their prayers might guide her home. Their story unfolded with a quiet intensity that left Drive Miller listening without interruption. He could picture the vast desert stretching under a burning sun, the helplessness the family must have felt as each hour passed. They told him about the calls they sent out, the volunteers who helped, and the moment they learned that a child matching Naya's description had been taken to the hospital by a doctor who refused to leave her side. Hearing those words, Drive Miller felt humbled. He had simply done what any physician should, but to them, it meant everything. Moved by their sincerity, he stepped back and gestured for them to come inside. The women entered slowly, looking around his home with respectful curiosity. The atmosphere was warm, filled with the soft aroma of coffee still fresh from the pot he'd brewed earlier. They sat together in the living room, and although the room was simple, it held a quiet comfort that made the guests relax. Dr. Miller offered water and tea, which they accepted politely. For a moment, there was silence, peaceful, not awkward, like the pause between two chapters of a story that had only just begun. As they settled, the eldest woman shared more about Naya, her playful nature, her love for making small beaded crafts, and her fascination with stories passed down by her grandmother. The younger women added their own memories, painting a vivid picture of the child's life in their community. Dr. Miller listened closely, realizing that he had treated Naya as a patient, but had not yet known who she was as a person. Now, through their words, her identity became rich and meaningful, deepening the bond he unknowingly formed with her. The eldest woman then spoke of something deeper, their culture's belief that every act of compassion creates a ripple that touches more lives than one can see. In their eyes, Drive Miller had not only saved a child, but had honored the connection between people and the land they share. The doctor felt a modest discomfort, not out of regret, but because he wasn't used to receiving such heartfelt gratitude. He had always seen medicine as a duty, a call he had answered with commitment. Yet this moment made him realize that healing extends beyond medicine, it reaches hearts. As the conversation continued, one of the younger women brought out a small bundle wrapped in soft cloth. She placed it gently on the table in front of him. When he opened it, he found a beautifully crafted piece of beadwork, intricate and colorful, clearly made with care. "A gift from our family," she said. "To remind you that kindness never disappears." The doctor was taken aback. He had received thank you notes and small tokens before, but nothing with such cultural meaning and personal significance. He held the piece gently, understanding the depth of the gesture. The visit continued with warm conversation, laughter, and a newfound sense of connection. The women asked about his work, his background, and the challenges he faced as a pediatrician in such a rural region. Dr. Miller spoke honestly, sharing stories of patients who had touched his life, and how he often felt that he learned just as much from families as they did from him. For the first time in a long while, he felt not just like a doctor, but like a human being seen and appreciated beyond his profession. The morning sun filled the room as if blessing the moment. When the women finally prepared to leave, they stood at the doorway with expressions that carried peace rather than worry. The eldest woman placed a gentle hand over her heart and said, "Our doors will always be open to you." Dr. Miller felt a warmth spread through him, something deeper than gratitude. As he watched them walk down the quiet road, he realized that the connection formed today was not temporary. What began as a simple rescue had grown into a bridge between worlds, one built on respect, humanity, and shared compassion. And deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of a story far larger than himself.